The plane ride from hell is synonymous with wrestling fans as one of the most bizarre wrestling incidents of all time. From X-Pac cutting off Michael Hayes' ponytail to Ric Flair fondling flight attendants, it's an incident that's surely to be remembered by fans for a lifetime. However, one part of the story was so crazy that fans asked how such a thing could even be possible. The incident in reference is when Brock Lesnar and Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig would wrestle each other in a plane at 30,000 feet. You would think such a thing would not only be impossible but would have only happened once, right? Well, what if I told you that not only has it happened numerous times, but it also involved Vince McMahon himself? Vince McMahon and Kurt Angle would go to war in a sort of plane ride from hell rematch on a flight back from England that exact same year. 2002 was a crazy year, maybe due in part to the fact that everyone had such high morale with WWF finally conquering WCW, leaving everyone seemingly feeling unstoppable. The wrestling landscape was a special place in 2002, and as Kurt Angle recalls from his autobiography, "It's true is true," you'll see just how chaotic things used to actually get. Since I started with the World Wrestling Federation, I've always had a friendly relationship with Vince, but until the trip to London, I never felt like I was as close to him as most of the other main event guys. I had great respect for him as the boss, but I guess I was somewhat intimidated by him, even though other people in the business told me it was important to develop a strong one-on-one relationship with him. Also, I wanted to be careful not to step on the toes of guys that I knew were very tight with Vince, so I kept my distance. But all of that changed on the charter flight back from England. Vince was moving around, talking to different people, and eventually he came over and sat down on the armrest of my chair. We started talking about the World Wrestling Federation and my match in England, and then we started talking about his years in amateur wrestling. He told me that his dad sent him to a military school in Virginia for his high school years, and that he had been a runner-up to the state champion among private schools. From there, we started talking about the time when Vince took me down in the ring one night on Raw as War. It was set up where he snuck behind me, lifted me in the air, and took me down, then jumped out of the ring yelling 2 for the takedown. Vince would portray himself as the genetic jackhammer on TV, however people fail to realize, even to this day, just how much of an abnormal human being that Vince McMahon is. He's not like you and me, he's like a sitcom character. As Kurt continues his story, he talks about how it was Vince's idea to get a takedown on an Olympic gold medalist on Monday Night Raw, adding another notch on Vince McMahon's already impressive resume. The whole thing was Vince's idea, and I think he came up with it just because he wanted to take down an Olympic champion. But anyway, on the plane, he was teasing me about that, saying he was the only one who ever took down an Olympic gold medalist on Raw. It was all in fun, and we had a good talk for about an hour or so. Finally, as he stood up to walk away, his last words were, "Remember, Angle, I'm the only one who's ever taken you down." Well, at that moment, something made me decide to have a little fun with the boss. When Vince got up to walk away, I attacked him from behind, knocked him down, turned him over, and pinned him right in the aisle. There were about 80 World Wrestling Federation people on the plane, and everyone was howling. Everyone except The Undertaker. I think he must have been sleeping and woke up when he heard the commotion. He told me later he saw Vince on the floor and couldn't tell who was on top of who. Vince and I had been on the floor for about 30 seconds as Vince struggled to get off of me when The Undertaker came over and put a chokehold on me. He clamped me so tight that he actually choked me out, and I blacked out for a minute. When I came to, Vince was standing up, and he had this big smile on his face. I think he just loved the idea that he was wrestling with an Olympic champion, and he decided it wasn't going to end there. In fact, he turned it into a competition for the next 4 hours on the plane. Any chance he had, he tried to take me down. He'd attack me from behind, he'd wait until I came out of the bathroom. Half the time, I wouldn't see him. He'd pop up from behind a chair and jump on me or leg dive me. He'd do whatever he could to try to take me down. One time he hit me so hard, he knocked me backwards off my feet. I hit my face on the ground, then got up and attacked him. I took him down, held him down for a while, and then we got up and hugged each other. As the story continues, Kurt talks about how even though he's literally an Olympic gold medalist, he still has trouble taking down the 55-year-old chairman of WWE. He was 55 years old, weighed 250 pounds, and I couldn't believe how strong he was. I had to do some finessing, fake, and wait for him to react, then spin him around. I couldn't just out-muscle him. So we went back and forth for the rest of the flight, and everybody seemed to be getting a kick out of it. I figured the whole thing was over when we had to return to our seats for the landing at Newark Airport. But then I was sitting there, strapped in as we were about to land, and I saw this figure in the dark crawling up the aisle. The flight attendants were already strapped in, but there was Vince, trying to sneak up on me one more time. I turned around and said to Chris Jericho, "Can you believe this?" Vince was still in the aisle when we landed, and when I got up out of my seat, he attacked me one more time. This time he knocked me into his wife Linda, who fell on the floor. I said, "Oh my god, I just knocked over Linda McMahon." But she was a great sport about it. She knew Vince was having a good time, and she probably recognized it was his way of bonding with me. So we went at it one more time, and finally, when we got off the plane, Vince said, "This isn't over." It sure made the trip home livelier than anyone expected, but it also moved my relationship with Vince to a different level. While this incident wouldn't be as noteworthy or memorable to fans as the plane ride from hell, I feel like it should still be recognized for just how truly funny and bizarre it is. Vince McMahon sleeping through the plane ride of hell makes more sense too when he was doing the same type of shenanigans on board that everyone else was doing. Kurt Angle, who was afraid of being fired, got close to Vince, bonded with him on this flight, and would go on to be one of the greatest WWE wrestlers of all time.